Welcome everyone to a new episode of Technique Tuesday. This week we're going to be looking at the most effective variations to isolate the chest. Now before we get into that, I think I should say that I think the best way to build a big, strong chest is to build up a big bench press. And if I had to include just one accessory movement, it'd probably be a weighted dip. But with that said, if you have a lagging chest or if you have disproportionately developed pecs, say for example, your upper chest is lagging, then you can use an isolation movement like a fly to squeeze in some extra chest volume without creating too much fatigue overall. So with really any fly, we're going to be performing primarily horizontal shoulder adduction. So basically bringing your arm across your body. And this is the same basic biomechanical movement pattern you're performing with a bench press or a dumbbell press, except with the fly, the elbow angle is going to be kept pretty much constant, which is going to take the triceps out of the movement and isolate the chest. Whereas in a press, your elbow is going to flex and extend under load, which has the advantage of targeting more overall muscle mass, but also makes the lift harder to recover from. Now we can target the upper chest more by adding in a shoulder flexion component, since the clavicular head of the pecs is able to assist with shoulder flexion, or basically raising your arm up like in a front raise. And this is the same reason why an incline bench angle tends to hit the upper pec fibers a bit better. It forces you to perform more shoulder flexion, targeting that clavicular head. Now, one of the lesser known functions of the pec is shoulder internal rotation. So basically when you rotate your arms inward, and you can try this for yourself. If you put your hand on your chest and then rotate your arm inward, you should feel your pec contract a bit. So in order to make this feasible, we're going to want to set up our flies on cables rather than using dumbbells or the pec deck. Now that isn't to say those options are no good, but if I had to pick just one fly to use, I think it would be a cable fly. And the problem with using dumbbells is that you reach peak tension at the bottom where you have maximum stretch on the pecs, since torque is going to be greatest at that point. But then throughout the concentric range of motion, tension progressively decreases until it reaches a minimum at the top where there's basically zero tension on the pecs. Now, one potential fix here is to stop a bit shy of full adduction and just sort of keep a constant tension groove going in the mid-range. And that can work, but then you're still going to be missing out on that peak contraction at the top. And while the pec deck is better in the sense that it has a more consistent resistance curve, it's still limited in the fact that your shoulder is going to be more locked into position. So you're pretty much forced into performing pure adduction, meaning you can't get that shoulder flexion involved to hit the upper pecs more or internally and externally rotate freely. So assuming the goal is to target the upper pecs, I think you should set up the cables low so that when you grab the handles, your arms are out at about 15 to 30 degree angle. Take 1 or 2 steps forward until you feel a slight stretch in your pecs, and plant your feet with a stable stance so you don't lose your balance. For me, a staggered stance works best. And before initiating the positive, you want to make sure that your shoulder blades are retracted and depressed exactly as they would be in a bench press. And you should find that if you really keep your scapulae retracted, you'll feel a much stronger pec contraction at the top than if you allowed your back to round forward, which is sort of going to ease the slack off the pecs. You also want to externally rotate your shoulders. You're just going to put the pec in its most lengthened position before you initiate the fly. And then from there, you can draw the cables up and across your body simultaneously while thinking about pulling the insides of your elbows in toward one another. So as you perform the positive, you're going to be internally rotating until you reach a hand position at the top where your thumbs are facing one another. And then on the negative, you want to reverse the motion under control, allowing the pecs to stretch as you bring your arms back down while externally rotating at the same time. Now, because the fly is a single joint isolation movement, we're going to be using lighter weights here with higher reps, usually something in the 15 to 20 rep range. And because it's more of a pump-focused mind-muscle connection style movement, there is plenty of room to be creative. So you can use a sequence where you set the cables up high for your first set to hit more of the lower pec, in the middle for set 2 to hit the middle pec, and then set them up low for set 3 to target the upper chest more. I'll also sometimes include intensity techniques such as cable fly 21s, where you'll do 7 reps in the top half of the range, 7 reps in the bottom half to hit the stretched position, and then 7 full range of motion reps to really finish the pecs off. Now granted, this is something I'd probably reserve for the end of a workout for a bit of extra metabolic stress, and so it doesn't interfere with any of your heavier pressing volume. Now I would say that the most common error that I see on the cable fly is just not controlling the movement well. It's common to see people use way too much triceps involvement to help get the weight down, rather than controlling the weight by squeezing their pecs only. So you don't need to walk the triceps completely straight, but they should be kept at the same angle from top to bottom. Now, another common mistake is not keeping your shoulder blades retracted and depressed. As I discussed in the Technique Tuesday video on the bench press, it's important to keep your scapulae back and down to put the pecs in a mechanically safer and stronger position. And if you want to try this out for yourself, you should feel a huge difference in how hard your pecs fire if you allow your shoulders to roll forward versus if you keep your scapulae back. And besides that, this forward rounding can lead to shoulder pain that can be easily avoided by simply locking your upper back into position first.
优卡进场，1分钟1元，收费健身魂。